What does conflict mean to you?
In film, it means something different than it does in life, but conflict is critical when you're trying to write dramatic fiction because it exposes the character's truth. If, for example, let's say my goal is to dramatize for the audience that a woman loves her son, her young son. Now, I could show them walking down the street together and they could, I love you, honey. I love you too, mommy. Well, I guess I've done it. I've communicated the information. But if I have them walking down the street, they stop for a moment. She stops to chat with the passerby, and the little boy, she looks around and he's suddenly gone, and she's frantic and she starts rushing from store to store to see if anybody's seen her son and yelling, and pulls out her phone to dial 911, and she's bursting into tears as she tries to explain. And then she looks up and she sees him standing at a toy store window staring in at the toys, and then she rushes up and hugs him. Now I have dramatized how much she loves him. I have shown it. I have made the audience feel that she loves him. If I simply say it, I've communicated the information in a way, but I haven't made the audience feel that information, and that's my job as a screenwriter, as a storyteller, again, is to make the audience feel something. That's the contract we made. So that's the distinction. The distinction is conflict. I created a conflict of the child being missing. Without that conflict, it's just people talking. This is something you see a lot of now because so many people are writing films. I want to say it's for the wrong reasons, but it's probably, they don't truly understand what film is, fiction film is, and so they're not thinking about communicating the emotion of the scene, they're just trying to communicate some sort of information. You'll see that in a lot of films that are very well-intentioned. They have noble subject matter. They may be about an issue or a person, a historical figure, and we want to show them in their best light, and we don't want to show any conflict. We don't want to have them be conflicted either internally or externally. I saw this to some degree just recently in the movie Rustin, which was a Netflix movie. I think it was on Netflix. It's produced by Barack and Michelle Obama. It's about a historical character, a civil rights leader. Okay, and he had a fascinating life. He was obviously a fascinating person. But having read a little bit about him since the movie, I realized they ducked and dodged a lot of the conflicts that occurred in his life, particularly conflicts he had with Malcolm X, because obviously they didn't feel it would be politically correct to show them, even though that's what the audience wants to see. As a storyteller, you have to lean into conflict. You want to make your characters go toward conflict rather than away from it. I say make them, I don't mean that the character has to take steps that are deliberately self-destructive. I mean, you want to construct the story so that it moves into the darkest, deepest, most powerful conflicts possible, because that's what the audience wants to see. Otherwise, what are we doing here? We should just do a documentary or write an article about him as opposed to dramatizing his life. Conflict is how we show the character's truth. And so the more the better. In fiction, we don't like it in real life, but in fiction, the more the better.
Right, similar to when someone writes an autobiography and it's just like this sort of glowing look back at their life.
Right.
Rather than a biographer showing the warts and all.
Right.
Stuff that maybe the family doesn't want the public to know.
Exactly, and from that comes the truth of the character. Sure. I had an experience, I wrote a play called Red Remembers, which is a one-man show about this pioneer sportscaster, Red Barber, who'd had a very interesting life. And I was commissioned to write this play, and I did a lot of research, as you would imagine, but I wasn't really getting to the guts of the character because it was all surface stuff about the people he'd met and the things he'd done. As interesting as they were, it wasn't worthy of an evening out at a play until I started to notice that he's long since passed away. I started to notice that many of his stories had to do with alcohol, with drinking. There were funny stories about drinking, usually somebody else drinking, some other sportscaster or some other athlete and his drinking problems. And wasn't it funny how they did this silly thing? And his daughter was still alive at that point, and I called her with some trepidation because I didn't know her well. And I asked her, I hope I don't offend you, but did your dad have a drinking problem? And she suddenly told me story after story after story about, yes, he was an alcoholic and what it meant and how it affected their lives. And suddenly the story started to come to life because I saw the conflict, the inner conflict in his life, something he was trying to hide desperately, something he had to battle. It made the play come to life. And there were other things I discovered as well along the way, but until you get under the skin of that character, in this case it was a real person whose family was still alive, and I had to be honored, truthful in honoring him, but still get to the conflict of the story. Nobody wants to see a lecture, and nobody wants to see someone's life just, wasn't he wonderful? Here's another wonderful thing he did. That's wonderful. I don't want to pay money to see it, nor should I. It's not dramatic writing.